These players, there's only 2 matches ongoing, 4 players, only 2 will qualify to the Esports World Cup. Levon Aronian jumped in front of Andrei Sipenko. He's only a draw away, but a bit of a closer match, and certainly a more tense one with some history between the players from recent matches. Anish Giri, Hans Niemann, we are in game 3 right now, but Giri with the lead can actually win here, Eric, and qualify immediately.
Yeah, he scored a win with black, and if he can pull that off again, how can that happen? Well, Hans knows he doesn't want to be in a situation where he has to win with black against Giri in the final game. So if you're picking a spot to really press and go all in, it's going to be your game with white. You know, Anish is so solid with white when he wants to be, does not make mistakes, and his preparation is impeccable. This is the game where Hans, look at G4, has to imbalance the position and put Giri under pressure. And at least we see some early energy. The G4 move, it's double-edged, right? It kicks away the bishop on G6. It grabs some space. It does weaken the king, so there's some drawbacks. But you're happy to take that trade-off when you want an imbalanced position. You want pieces on the board. You want both sides to have some squares. You're happy with that trade-off. It's not like some symmetrical position, not like some Petrov. Anish playing quickly, taking on D4 right away. Sometimes one of the ideas here for black is if you're going to take on D4 and give white C takes D4 in a bit of a center, what you're looking to do is push your pawn from D6 to D5 to try to shut down that bishop on A2. Is there time for Giri to follow up with that? The other question is, can Hans take back with a knight, preparing to plant it on F5? If Anish says no, then he has to take that knight immediately. If he takes that knight immediately, then Hans is saying, I'm going to then probably take back with a pawn and prepare to play pawn F2 to F4 and launch a pawn assault on Anish's king, which is complemented by his bishop on A2, his bishop on C1 will join the party when the pawn goes from F2 to F4 to F5. Go put that bishop on F4, and that looks like a nice space advantage. So I like the start for Hans here.
I completely agree, because I'm looking at this F pawn, and maybe a move that Giri perhaps didn't anticipate was knight takes D4, because why wouldn't you take with the pawn? Take the entire center, 2 pawns in the middle. So knight takes D4, all of a sudden F2, F4, and then F5. The move H6 tells me that his reaction to that is going to be bishop to H7, but that bishop is completely out of the game. I think that Hans Niemann has the best starting position he could hope for. While it's not a must-win game, it feels like it is because of what you pointed out. He doesn't want to go and draw this game and then have to win with black in the last game against Anish. That's a very, very tough ask. So I think this is his moment, and certainly based on the position, it is definitely right now.
This looks absolutely terrible, and it's surprising to see Anish find himself in this position this early on with his opening understanding and repertoire. He must have missed knight takes D4, but this is really not where you want to be, giving Hans a comfortable position, attacking chances, pressure. I almost think that in the future, Anish in the long run is going to be playing King H8, F6, and Bishop G8. Does that look pretty? No. Does that look slow? Yes. But do I want to allow white to just run me over those pawns and do nothing? I can't do that. I can't let just this pawn on E4 push to E5 and go further down the board. And at the same time, my bishop on E7 isn't looking at anything useful. That pawn on F5 is protected far too much. That bishop on A2 is a very effective bishop. You got to start trading off pieces when you lack space. Trade off that strong bishop on A2. White would still be better. There's lots of problems here. The bishop on H4, it had nowhere else to be, so he's planning it there to maybe stop even the H pawn from advancing. But again, just a disastrous opening from Giri, giving Hans everything he'd want from an opening position.
Yeah, this is awful. And now your idea of f6 can just be met by e6. That light squared bishop is never going to see the light of day. And f6 also traps the bishop on h4. So there are many reasons why the two bishops for black are just out of the game. They're not relevant. White's going to play rook a1 to d1 into the middle of the board, king up to g2, queen up to f3. This is absolutely everything to play for. Immediately, king g2 to threaten the move e6 looks pretty good. Eric, this is a disaster. Hans Niemann has one of the best starting positions that he could possibly ask for.
Yeah, there's so many choices here. You've given a few setups. One thing I'm looking at is even the endgames. Because this bishop on h7 is so out of play, there's even endgames that are just really, really demoralizing for black. Because, yeah, if you give white a protected pass pawn on e6, I think those endgames are just busted. Both of your bishops are bad without a future. Anish is going to have to be tactical with the clock, try to gain a time advantage. He doesn't have, you know what? There's a 4-3 majority on the king side for Hans's pawns. They're advanced. You can't remove that. You don't have the pawns. You don't have equivalent pawns or pieces to actually erode that pawn mass. So you have to just admit, I'm going to be passive. I'm going to just, put my rooks in e8 and wait for Hans to lead things. Because if you make a rash decision, like a move like f6, giving a permanent, like that protected pass pawn on e6 feels like it's too much. So Anish is going to have to play fast here and admit the opening's gone poorly. I'm just going to be worse for a long time, but it's chess. It's 10-minute chess. We don't play perfectly. I'm not lost yet, but I can't give him any more than I've already given.
Yep, agree with that. And look, even offering the queen trade, it's interesting to note that, all positions, like end games as well, are just going to be better for Hans. The one thing that rook e4 does is, it starts to make me think of, not right now probably, but rook takes d4. If I could sacrifice and maybe win the e-pawn, I might be interested in that. But at the moment, it's just not really an option because white can trade the queens on b5. I'm desperate to just get some playability back in the position because I really don't see the future. Like you said, you're just going to be suffering, playing some moves that are just the best you can do in a bad position. And the best gear you can do now is just play fast.
Yeah, just play fast. You hope that when Hans pushes forward and opens up a bit more when he feels like the time is right, that might also be the right time for Anish to, as you mentioned, maybe sacrifice an exchange for compensation. He's utilized that in a few games. We've seen Nihal in some tough spots really look for that kind of escape. But in the meantime, Hans still nurturing this space advantage, and Anish is just giving checks with the queen. That might be practical. This is some of the hardest chess to play as black. But once you admit you've played it poorly and your opponent has a big advantage, you're no longer looking for that equality. You just have to then your plan is simple. At least you have some clarity. c5, I understand he wants to put his queen on c6 and maybe at some point utilize his queenside pawns to harass maybe the bishop on c3 or something. But the other c5 also has problems too. It does weaken the d5 square. And for example, if queen c6 was played, Hans can maybe move the rook back to e2, offer a queen exchange, and be very happy.
Yep. Giri is basically banking on b5, a5, maybe c4 to close the bishop, or b4 to harass the bishop on c3. And I think that's why we see a4. I like that move. I know there's other things to do, but you have to understand that Giri is really not doing anything in his position right now. And so the one plan that does exist, b5, a5, stop that, right? If you're Hans Niemann, prevent that plan, and then you just operate from there. Bishop c4, I really like what he's doing. He's taking the slow approach. He's not rushing. We saw Hans Niemann earlier in a different match. He rushed. right? He had that game that he just went way too quick when he had an advantage against Sindarov, and I think that he's matured a little bit since then, and I love the patience that he's showing here.
Yeah, a4 and bishop c4 was great. It controls black's queenside majority. The bishop on c4 covers the d3 square, so anticipating black would try to grab some space on the d file, but it's all artificial, and Hans has increased his advantage and now is almost in a position to strike with one of the pawn moves in the center.
Look at those bishops covering every single access point. Just a beautiful game so far by Hans. I will credit Anish for keeping the time like at least reasonably close, because at some point I wouldn't know what to do. Every move doesn't look good. The bishop on h7, you don't know whether you should play bishop g8 or not. It just doesn't have a future. So the fact that he's playing quick moves is at least something.
Some consolation, maybe with bishop g5. He might go bishop d2, trying his best to trade off. But the sad part is, even some trades like that, the position is still really, really bad because you're still stuck with an observer on h7. That's
right. Yep. There's not much to do about that. One thing that bishop g5 does is threatens this idea of bishop d2, but it also allows potentially king or queen to g3 and then h4 to happen. So while it has an idea, it also allows a full pawn storm to potentially happen. So I wonder if Hans is going to be interested in that.
This opening and this position is one of the worst, like from a e4, e5, like worst positions I've ever seen Anish have. I mean, I haven't followed all of his games, but he is really durable and solid with black. And you just don't often see him with the bishop on h7 like this. It's not something you can afford against any of the elite players, let alone Hans, who's been really, really good at pressuring his opponents and converting his good positions. You mentioned that one game he slipped up. Well, he knows that, and he's looking to improve on that. And right now, like what he's doing, I also like what Anish is doing, as you mentioned. He's staying competitive on the clock in a position that we could flip the colors, and you saw how this is as like this is not a fun position to play as black. But again, once you admit you've really messed up, it adds some clarity, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to shuffle, and my opponent's going to have to force their way through.
Okay, so very critical move that was just played. E6. The bishop on h7 breathes life again, but obviously this pawn on e6, incredibly well supported. The bishop on c3 is now open. Bishop d2 doesn't really exist because bishop e5 is now the reaction. And depending on the move, okay, rook e7, of course, blocking the pawn. There you go. We might see the idea of trying to push the h-pawn now take shape.
Queen g3 and h4. What do we do as black?
Exactly. King g3. Love it. All looks good, because where's that bishop going? Bishop d2, very, very artificial. And remember, there's going to be a lot of positions where queen down to f8 is going to be a knockout blow at the end of a lot of variations. Queen g3 did have the idea of bishop d6, which I thought was interesting, but king g3, you're just looking to, h4 and kick that bishop out. Well, it looks like h4 makes sense.
I'm almost going to play h4 and almost take on d2 and play queen e3.
Right.
I don't see the win there fully yet. So rook d2, queen e3 with queen takes h6 ideas. Maybe that's too hasty.
But maybe you have rook f7 at the end of that line.
Yeah, exactly. We're at the point in the game where Hans is looking for the win.
Yeah, he's not just looking for the next move. He's looking to win the game with tactics outright. Even rook takes d2, if you don't win the game outright, I think that's one of those moves that reminds me of the sacrifice Levon did. It's just a good sacrifice. It must lead somewhere. But, you can't go out on a whim. You got to have raw calculation. Let's see what he decides to do, because he has a number of good decisions. But rook takes d2 looks very strong.
Just looking at black sacrificing back on e6, that's why I wasn't fully sure. Bishop here, I saw that's a really nice looking move. Just sometimes you tell yourself, is that too fancy to play? Hans says no, I can get away with it. And
Yeah,
wow,
so he wants to, take back on f6 and then rook g7, maybe play rook takes d2, queen takes h6 check, and then pick up the rook on d2 again. And I'm wondering, is there really anything that can be done about that? I'm not sure. So maybe
that's really nice. A really nice find by Hans.
Rook f8. Let's be honest, not the move that you want to see in a position like this.
Can
just
you
looks a
take on g7
tricky
here?
Yep.
And just go into the end game? Or
Take
is that
on f8 and then
no.
You can take on e6 though.
Yeah, e6 is hanging.
Gets out of the way.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. And there's still a huge advantage for Hans Niemann here. Giri is fighting super hard. Like, it's really, really impressive. But to overcome the advantage that Hans has is going to need a lot more than rook f8.
Yeah, and the nice thing for white is that king might look open to you. Hans confidently played it up. It can always go to h3 if it ever gets checked. And then there's no more checks, no more problems. He's not worried at all about that. He knows he's winning. He's playing like it's winning. And it's time to go, just go for that king. Go for that king or push that e-pawn through. Rook d8. Anish is still finding some annoying moves. Just staying in the game is very impressive. So much to calculate for everyone involved here. But at the end of the
now
day,
rook f8 doesn't work, right? Rook f8, bishop g7, king g7, queen e5, and bishop d3.
This is looking like a model game from Hans Niemann here.
Could you just take the rooks here? Bishop e7, bishop d8? Is that crazy?
You could. For some reason, I think you might be looking at a move like queen e5 here.
Yeah,
and there
much more control. I like that. This has been a great game by Hans. It feels like Anish kind of just handed it to him in the opening. But you know what? Converting a winning position is not easy to do. And Hans has really never taken his foot off the gas, start to finish. This is looking fantastic.
So if you take on f6, okay, now rook f7. Just rook f7, rook takes d2, right? That's just immediately over.
Yep.
I was wondering what the plan was if king f7, but that was just rook f7 as well. This is just over. And even psychologically, what a blow.
That is just a beautiful, beautiful game. I mean, he was given a nice position at the start, but he made the most of it, and there's really nothing that Giri can do. Hans Niemann with the white pieces wasn't a total win on demand game, but he absolutely, clearly needed this win because you don't want to draw the game and leave it to the last round.
Yeah, this queen b8 move does get the queens off, but notice that d2 bishop hangs in the end, so white is up. That f7 pawn going to make rook d7. It's all but over here, and Anish is down to 40 seconds. Him even surviving up until this stage is impressive, but the way Hans is playing, it's not enough. It was a winning position a long time ago. It's still winning. He hasn't relented, and just a couple accurate moves, and we'll be looking at a tied match.
Yeah, 1.5 going into that final game.
You
Potential
think maybe
Armageddons.
Rook. That's a move.
B3 here. And you can probably just collect the pawns. Remember, the most important pawn to win is actually the H pawn because you want the two connected pawns. Rook F4.
I'm a little surprised by a couple of decisions. I think this is still winning. For sure it's winning, but it wasn't necessary. At the end of the day, though, Hans is winning on the board and on the clock.
I would play rook f6 here. That looks like a position that you'll either win or flag in, but may not be objectively the best.
Hans is a little bit nervous right now.
For sure he is.
Even, and he's only
not his proudest conversion.
But here comes the king. Great move. King e7. Great find. All of a sudden, Hans is down to 20 seconds. He was completely winning, and he chose to go into this end game. Can he convert this? He's now down time, only up a pawn. There are situations where Anish can come back here.
And that was a good move. But remember, Anish can actually win this game on time, and he would qualify. This is incredible.
Hans needs to play faster here.
He's not realizing the danger of the clock.
He won't even have enough time, even if he wins material here. He's down to 8 seconds.
Hans needs to wake up and just move.
King
It doesn't matter what the
G7,
move is.
down to 6 seconds. What's going on?
It's all about the time.
my
He's not
goodness.
moving fast enough.
5 seconds. He's going to take on B6. The pre-moves are coming in, but can you actually win this game? Oh.
Okay, he's sacrificing to help the pre-moves. It's a good idea, but I don't think that this is enough. Will the players draw the game? He's 1 second. He's going to flag.
It's not enough. It's not enough. The rook's coming in for another check.
He's 1 second. He's going to flag.
Oh my god!
Niemann is officially out in incredible fashion.
When Hans, wow, he was in the flow the entire game and winning, and some sportsmanship there between the players. He just never transitioned to bullet mode. He was up 15, 20 seconds. That was one of the most winning positions he's had. And
he'll look back on that for a long time, Eric. He will not be happy.